It's Florida Daily TV, brought to you by FloridaDaily.com. For all your news on politics, business, and education, it's FloridaDaily.com. Now, here's your host, Ed Dean.
Another edition of Florida Daily TV right here on FloridaDaily.com. Eric Eikenberg. He was co-hosting the radio show with me last week in Tallahassee. People are like, is Eric taking over? Not yet. But anyway, host of our morning show, which is syndicated statewide, Eric Eikenberg. We were both in Tallahassee. He is the CEO of the Everglades Foundation, evergladesfoundation.org. You said something, by the way, we have a lot of these economic analysts that come on the show, and we were talking about, okay, and I don't want to not try to pin you on this position. You know how they ran COVID through, and I was like, okay, infrastructure, you guys will get funding. At least I would assume you got several areas on the infrastructure bill. And I said, Eric, man, this seeing how DC is working. I'm not saying for you one group to pick sides or not. I was thinking this thing is going to get done by June or July. You said it's going to be September. Guess what? All the other guys I'm interviewing thinks it's going to be September. Here's the question: Everglades restoration projects, infrastructure, which this is about, jobs creation. Do we know what may be proposed? Does it go to the House and then members of Congress start inserting bills? What do we see right now with Everglades restoration?
Yeah, Ed, good to be with you.
Yeah.
I did enjoy our time last week in Tallahassee.
Great.
Maybe that'll be a second career of radio. It's a voluminous package that they're talking about. It's going to touch on a whole host of areas. When you look specifically at infrastructure and what we're focused on, water infrastructure, Everglades construction projects that you referenced, the Transportation Infrastructure Committee in the House, the Public Works Committee in the Senate. So those are the two areas that we're focusing on. And the beauty of this is the delegation here in Florida, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, understand that this is a key moment that we're in, and they're willing and able and ready to start advocating to get infrastructure dollars dedicated to Everglades restoration. So we'll see how it plays out, whether it's soon, July, September, on the timeline, wherever it might be. But we cannot miss this opportunity. We got to finish these projects.
Now, again, I'm putting you on the spot just because it's almost like not the Monday morning after the football game, but the predictions beforehand, before you put all your bets on ESPN or whatever. Sure. It's possible from what we're hearing that there could be a part one dealing with infrastructure, real infrastructure, and then the rest of all this stuff may be put down. Is that maybe what we're hearing as well?
I've heard that, and all we're concerned about is part one. So
that's right.
Let's get it in part one. This is part of the traditional infrastructure discussions where roads, bridges, airports, seaports, water. That's, in our view, the traditional infrastructure. Broadband,
reservoir,
the broadband issue.
The reservoir's real infrastructure. Yeah.
It is. And these are shovel-ready jobs. And the beauty of promoting this in Washington is you have a state, as in Florida, who's standing there with a match. So for every dollar that Washington's going to put into this, Florida has the match, $1 for $1. Not the Great Lakes, not Chesapeake Bay, and those states that surround those ecosystems. So we're in a unique opportunity, and that's why we don't want to miss it.
The governor, this is a great story. We talked about this on the radio show. The governor comes out and says, hey, I got this amount of full funding. You loved it. Oh, now guess what? Tallahassee says, hey, governor, we're going to outdo you by $161 million. I know we like that. Does the Everglades restoration, does it be, for the audience out there, this is statewide now, for all of you following us, does it become a separate entity, or is it lumped in with other water projects in Tallahassee? And does that become a plus or a negative, because maybe a little bit more could have been done for Everglades restoration? And I understand you guys are very supportive of other water projects. Does that water it down, or do they combine all of this together for the audience out there?
No, they roll it all up. So when you hear about a number of 625 or 685 or whatever the number might be, million, that's the number that's rolled up for all of these environmental issues. When we talk about Everglades restoration, it's to construct the projects that are part of the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, which is now 20 years old. So that is a specific line item in the budget, and that's looking right now at about 280, potentially rising up to 300 million at the end of the day. It's significant. It's almost half of the total number. And that's where when we go to Washington, we're able to say, look at Florida. Florida's been committed to this from day one, and the Governor DeSantis, the administration has clearly made this a priority, and the legislature from both sides of the aisle are stepping up.
Now, there was a story that came out. You got these budgets out there. The House has got one. They're both nearly shy of $100 billion. You've got the real estate community. You've got the healthcare community. They're worried about certain cuts. So as of now, what I'm getting at, everything seems to be, I mean, we're on target. We're not going off on a sidetrack for water projects and Everglades restoration as of now, correct?
Everything looks good. And these dollars that you and I are talking about here today are coming out of the Land Acquisition Trust Fund. This is part of the Amendment 1 that viewers may recall. We amended the state constitution in 2014 by 75% of the vote, a true unifying issue. And as real estate transacts here in Florida, and it's happening now in a massive way as we're dealing with the pandemic. So as those real estate tax dollars are placed into Amendment 1, the money's there for the priorities and the issues that the governor's made has put a marker down on.
I got to ask you a fun question. I asked you this on the morning show, and these quote trust funds. I know you said the accounts is what you call them. It's not new. I mean, you worked in state government. This was happening before you worked there. They're always trying to move money around in these quote trust funds. I thought when you pass these amendments, like Amendment 1, I thought the money was specifically used for this, not to be touched. Just kind of for the audience out there, because I want to get to more of the Everglades stuff here. How is it that things how do they move that? How are they allowed to move this money around if they're not supposed to?
Great question. Listen, when you're an appropriator, when you're building a budget, the only responsibility that they have under the Constitution is to pass a balanced budget. So do they have the ability to go in and as people say, raid those trust funds? Yes, and they've done them in the past. I hope that with the federal dollars that are coming from the relief package, plus the state revenues that we're seeing, that these funds can be protected. Certainly on the environmental side, right. We're in good shape right now. But Ed, you may even have one of the old lock boxes. Remember the lock box. So people say they want to keep these trust funds where they are. It's you just hope that they stick to what the voters wanted.
Here's a little, just kind of a fun question. Do they always? Is it ones that you are associated with? Do they always try to mess with I'm saying your personal trust fund, but with environmental, like for example, like water quality Everglades, do they always try to target that one, or is it's just all over? So in other words, they don't pick on you guys.
No, and picking on, if we want to say it that way, we haven't witnessed that. I think the legislature has, in a way. Now others may hear this and see this and disagree with me, but I'm just thinking. In just the past number of years, it's been in really good shape.
All right.
And I think under this administration, the way the governor has positioned environmental spending, it has almost insulated the debate in the legislature of rating those type of trust funds or those accounts. When you have a governor that's making a commitment, you have the same party in control of the legislature, we're in good shape.
Eric Eikenberg, here's another interesting question. I want to get to the op-ed by your board chairman, which is a good one, by the way. There's been something like, hey, wait a second, we're talking more, and maybe I've been a reporter for years in Florida. Is it from this governor, not trying to diss any other past ones, but it seems like on a scale of 1 to 10, if we were supposed to go at, we've been going from 30 miles an hour talking about Everglades restoration. We're up. If we can only go to 100 miles an hour, we're almost there underneath this governor. Is that a fair assumption right there? It's really gone from like 30 to 80, 0 to 100 in a matter of just a few years.
We have been at a good pace over the years. When Governor Bush was in office, the state of Florida had to go out in front to purchase land in order for these projects to be constructed. So again, we've been at a really good pace here in Florida. Where it's been accelerated is after the toxic algae outbreaks that we saw and the devastation that occurred to the economy, to the environment, when you had realtors, chambers of commerce, small business owners, anglers, boat manufacturers who said, enough, we're done. And then you had a candidate who was running for office who said, I'm going to focus on this. The person gets elected, i.e. Ron DeSantis. And then 2 days after taking the oath of office, he lays out a bold vision and he calls for robust, steady funding. Funding is what's making this happen, because the governor has made it clear we can't afford any more of these calamities as far as it pertains to the Everglades. And, money talks as it relates to this, and these projects are moving.
When you look at the, let's go back to Washington here before I go back to state. An infrastructure, if this can get tackled along with what the state is doing, this is almost like a bonus out there. Does the infrastructure, which you have talked about on our radio show, heard statewide, and also here on Florida Daily TV in the articles, is it like a 5 to 8 year infrastructure plan, or is this something that, hey, listen, we're not talking 20 years down the road, Ed, we're talking we might be able to get some of these reservoirs done in the next quicker amount of time? What are we looking like a timeline sometimes?
I've circled the year 2030, and I know that's 9 years off, but that was the date under the original passage of the comprehensive plan where we would build these projects out. 30 years. So here we are entering the last decade. And when we visit with the Army Corps of Engineers, the South Florida Water Management District, they have estimated, based on their schedule, that you need roughly $5 billion between now and 2030 from Washington in order to finish out the projects that Congress has already authorized. Congress has approved projects as far back as 2006 that are languishing. They're languishing because the money's not there to finish them. So if the infrastructure package is finally going to move, let's get the $5 billion from Washington to go towards these projects, and let's finish them now. Let's get them moving so that by the year 2030, we can then shift from restoration over to preservation.
To move it up that quick, does that also include state funding as well to move the timeline up quicker?
Yes, the state has to continue. It doesn't have to. It's not going to be as high because, again, the state's in front, roughly about $2.5 billion. The state of Florida is ahead of that. So when this is all said and done, it has to be a 50-50 match or a 50-50 equal distribution here. So Washington's going to pay for half of all this. Florida's going to pay for the other half. So as we get more Washington funding out of Congress, it's going to start to bridge that gap. It's going to bring it closer to the 1-for-1. But yes, Florida's going to have to maintain the steady funding that's been now set by Ron DeSantis. And that's going to have to also continue for this decade.
Eric, again, I want to get to the very good op-ed in the Miami Times by your board chairman. There always is conversation about, quote, accountability. I have to assume, I know you guys, hey, listen, we follow through, make sure the money's being spent. Does the governor's office have an accountability, like a GOA, government accountability office, where they sit back, and I know on certain projects, but make sure that reservoirs, that stuff is on time, we're not running behind, no hurricanes that slowed us down? Does the government have a type of group for the audience out there, for them, I understand for us, but for the audience out there that kind of oversees that things are getting done, money's being properly spent?
During my time in the governor's office, yes, the office of the budget office maintains and the numbers, watches the progress that's taking place. So you have that entity directly within the governor's office itself, but then you have the agencies that are also responsible. So for this example, the Department of Environmental Protection is monitoring the progress that's occurring. The Secretary Valenstein is laser focused on these priorities. And then he's also coordinating with the South Florida Water Management District, which that governing board, those men and women were placed there by the governor. They understand exactly what the priorities are here and what needs to be done. So yes, there are layers to maintain that this is moving in the direction as a governor wants. And I think viewers should know that a process, if it's functioning, it works well. And so far it is on this case. Carlos
De La Cruz Jr., the board chairman with Everglades Foundation, published an op-ed, Miami Times, by the way, which, on Everglades Day, talked about that, hey, listen, we can do these projects. We've got existing taxes. We're not talking about bringing up an income tax and everything else. The real estate community is booming in South Florida. We got more tourism coming around. It was a good one. I liked it because it was based on marketplace ideas that we can fund this, and we don't need to be talking about an income tax. It was a good piece. I wish that was talked more.
Well, we certainly talk about it as every chance we can. Yes, no income tax. That's what draws people. That's one of the reasons what draws people to Florida is our tax structure here in the state. Also our weather, also our natural environment, our resources. So what our chairman, what Carlos penned there, was to highlight the importance that real estate, the importance that tourism plays in our success. So as we work with realtors across this state, as we work with organizations, whether they're in tourism or in the business community, it's demonstrating that as people come here, they need to understand how water is impacting their lives, how we need to increase the supply of water, how we need to stop wasting billions of gallons of this natural and fresh resource, and get people more involved in this important issue.
I always and I constantly remind people on the radio show, when you come on Florida Daily TV, this is about economics as well. Everglades restoration. I mean, you guys with the capacity of, and I mean this in a proper way, the amount of positive influence in Tallahassee, where you also talk about other infrastructure programs and other water projects out there as well. That as somebody who hunts, as somebody who fishes religiously out there, this, you talk about 15 years ago, ecotourism. What is this? And I guess the word eco, but yet we have, because of COVID, more people on the boats today, more people hunting, more people taking the kids instead of going to the mouse and Disney. No offense. They're always doing outdoors. It's a little bit less expensive out there. And I'm sitting here and you were telling me the story in the radio show. You were on your way to Naples and you're sitting back going, man, business is starting to boom down in South Florida.
It is. And certainly when you look at these places where people can go out and experience it firsthand. This view that's behind me, that's what folks can experience by just jumping on an airboat, going just a 30-minute drive from a major metropolitan area in the state, a state now that's 21 million strong. 9 million of us rely upon that picture behind me for water supply. So to be out and to recreate, to see it, to go in that ecotourism sense. And it's not just these stay vacations. You have people now that are coming from out of state, whether they're moving here or coming to visit. The airport numbers are increasing. People are now flying again as folks are vaccinated. So the importance here is we have a treasure in our own backyard. We should not take it for granted. We don't see it every day. It's not a mountain range like folks out west can experience. But this is the engine. This is the economic engine of our state. We're on the path to protect it. We need everybody. We need everyone to join this fight. We can't do it alone.
It's interesting. You talk about going to a park, wherever, no offense, somewhere. I mean, hey, it's great. I can go look at Mount Rushmore. I can go to the Yellowstone. I can see some things. But yet people, which you've talked about, go to Everglades. Hey, you can hunt down there. You can fish down there. I mean, kayak. I mean, this to me, I wish, and this is, listen, to visit Florida and Central Florida, I get it. But if the numbers for the environment, kayaking like I do, to me, those numbers are there, taking advantage of it. I'd like to see more, not from you, but from the Visit Florida side, the state's official tourism website. I'd like to see more of that. And pardon me, sometimes maybe I'm a little prejudiced. I don't see enough of that because, again, you can visit certain parks. You're limited what you can do, at least when it comes to the Everglades, this, and that.
Yeah, there's a variety of options, whether, even hiking and the efforts on the Florida Trail. My friend Carlton Ward is passionately working to ensure that we have a corridor through the heart of the state, certainly for panther habitat. But you can hike, you can fish, you can boat, you can camp. And people do it. And when they come back or you visit with them, the experience is every time it's more memorable than it was the last. So we are partnering, we are communicating with Visit Florida. We are working towards a partnership with that agency. I've known Dana Young for a number of years. She gets this. She understands how we need to sell Florida. This is the greatest state, in my view, here in the union. And we have, the reason why is because of these outdoor opportunities that we can all experience.
And the beauty about this is, and some of our shows that we're picked up on, our weekend shows are all fishing guides. All right. And they will tell you, and we know we use them for quotes when we do articles. They'll tell you blunt, hey, listen, if I can't get my, we listen to Eric every week on the show. If we can't get this done, guess what? The optics are bad, like the algae bloom, bad for business. No one's gonna, right now they're booked 4 to 5 months and for this year. They go, Eric's exactly correct. Everglades as well. If I can't get my optics looking good, like the picture behind you, we ain't getting any business, Eric.
Yeah, exactly right. And they're the foot soldiers in this, Ed. Those anglers, those folks, I had one a couple years back. You've heard the story when we were at the height of a toxic algae bloom there on the West Coast. I was standing in a boat with a fishing guide, and he told me, he said, "You're in my office. You're standing in my office, and my office is closed, and it's closed because of this algae bloom, this toxic water." And we're going to do something about it. So these fishing guides have organized themselves to where they're going to Tallahassee, they're going to Washington, they're making a difference. And I would encourage any angler, or you don't have to be an expert. If you love to fish, if you love to boat, if you're listening to these words here today, join this effort. We need your help.
Yeah, my office is a big old deer stand. Anyway, listen, Eric Eikenberg, the website's great. Does a lot of interaction with kids at the schools. The Park Madness, that was a great story. We talked about that. But follow them where a lot of this goes, because I'm not saying you have to agree with everything, but at least on the infrastructure, you guys, they'll keep you up to date. Follow the site. They'll be able to, also with the radio show in Florida Daily, to update. Okay, this is what's going on here, and this is what's going to be heard. I mean, by the way, are you going to take a trip up to DC at all with this whole bill, or is the legislative process got you covered down here?
Well, we did a briefing with the Florida delegation last week. It was virtual. Right. I hope in the coming weeks or months we can make that trip and walk the halls. But we're thankful to the Florida delegation. It's a unified group.
Right. Eric Eikenberg, the website's evergladesfoundation.org. He is the CEO. Eric, as always, good to see you. I'm glad you got able to co-host the show. That was fun, by the way.
I enjoyed it.
Coffee. We'll do it again. Eric Eikenberg here on Florida Daily TV. And this has been another edition of Florida Daily TV on floridadaily.com.